many things that can sway someone's opinion on a game. A deal breaker for one person might be what makes the game great to another. In my opinion, whether or not I enjoy a game really boils down to 5 main sections: story, combat, characters, exploration, and music. Not necessarily in that order. So, without further ado, let's get into talking about The Legend of Zelda Wind Waker. And it is very important to me that everyone knows this is the GameCube version, the original, not the Wii U version. I always knew I would eventually want to start talking about Legend of Zelda on my channel because while I have only played 4 games in the series before, Ocarina of Time, Wind Waker, Phantom Hourglass, and Spirit Tracks, they were always games I really enjoyed, and I really wanted to spur my progress in starting the other games like Twilight Princess and Skyward Sword. So I was like, maybe the YouTube channel is the motivation I need to actually start these games. Despite my urge to play a game I hadn't played before, Wind Waker was another one of those games I absolutely adored as a kid, much like Kirby's Epic Yarn, so I couldn't in good faith start my Legend of Zelda series of videos without talking about Wind Waker first. So yeah, I love the game, just so you know, right off rip. Our story begins with us learning of the legend of the hero in green, and how he saved the world from an evil a long time ago, and now that evil is beginning to resurface. We wake up as our hero of this game, who I named AG because we all know that I will name all of my characters AG in everything I play, but we all know him as Link. We wake up on the watchtower of our small, quiet island. Our little sister Errol, who is the most precious little bundle of sunshine, I love her so much, informs us that it's our birthday, and that our grandma is looking for us. Now, at this point in time, we're supposed to just go talk to our grandma, but why would we do that when there are so many other things to do on Outset Island? Like, catch pigs. A whole lot of pigs. Steal money from some random townsperson. Steal money from my grandma. And avoid the kid who has that nasty booger hanging out of his nose. This is all in a day's work. Anyways, when we stop fucking around and actually go to see our grandma, she gifts us with a nice set of green clothes that Link very obviously is uncomfortable in, but will continue to wear for the rest of eternity. Mwahaha. And then we return to Errol to get her to come inside. Errol gifts us with her most special possession, the telescope, and with it we see a pirate ship shoot a giant bird with a rock and drop a girl into a forest. So obviously we have to save her. In the process of doing so, Errol gets kidnapped by the big bird instead. And look how much my boy loves his little sis. He was ready to walk off that cliff, no questions asked. After that, a Rito postman, who is such a real one, basically guilt trips Tetra and the rest of the pirates into forcing her to take us with them to go save Errol. Basically, he's like, that bird was looking for you, you know, like that's why that girl got kidnapped, and Tetra feels bad, so she's like, okay, I guess you can come along, but her only condition is that we need a shield. So we go grab our family shield, we have a very heartfelt goodbye to our grandmother, and then we set off to go save Errol. Our journey takes us to the Forsaken Fortress first, where the big bird is supposedly lives, and oh my god, guys, the way that this minigame with Nico that you have to do before you get to the Forsaken Fortress fucked me up as a kid needs to be studied. I did it first try now because I'm so good at games now, but I remember like it being so difficult as a kid. I don't know if it was just because of like the camera being kind of janky. I don't know, but anyways, when we do get to the Forsaken Fortress, Tetra has the bright idea to shoot us out of a cannon to get us to where our sister is. They miss. Obviously, they miss the window where Errol is, and our sword goes flying, so we have to climb the fortress with literally nothing but a magic rock that Tetra gave us that lets her communicate with us. However, that does not stop us. We do get our sword back, we get to the top of the tower, but while we do confirm that our sister, baby precious Errol, along with a few other girls with pointed ears, are there at the Forsaken Fortress, we end up getting thrown by the big bird, just like yeeted across the sea, and are saved by the King of Red Lions, which is a red talking boat. Very exciting stuff. We learn from the King of Red Lions that in order to save our sister and to stop Ganondorf, who is the evil force in the tower, in like the Forsaken Fortress, we have to collect the 3 pearls from the ancient gods. So we head to Dragon Roost Island and secure Din's Pearl. Dragon Roost Island and Medley and Prince Komali are all very nostalgic for me. The music on the island is great, and I love the dungeon and the grappling hook mechanics. The whole thing with Dragon Roost Island is that the dragon god Valu, who sits on top of the mountain, is very angry, and they're not really sure why he's very angry, and they're not really able to communicate with him. So basically we head into the dungeon with Medley in order to figure out what's wrong and hopefully calm him down. We find out that the reason why Valu is so angry is because the boss of the dungeon was pulling on his tail, which is not very nice. So after we help him, we do get Din's Pearl from Prince Komali, which is super cool, and then we gain the power of the Wind Waker and learn how to control the winds, which is great because we use that power to travel to our next destination, the Forest Haven, which houses the Great Deku Tree and the Koroks. As someone who played Ocarina of Time, I love this area as well because the music was very reminiscent of one of the forest themes in Ocarina of Time, and I really love when composers do that. It's super cool. The Great Deku Tree wants to just give us Furor's Pearl right off the bat. I have so much trouble with that name, Furor, but tells us he can't until an annual ritual is completed to essentially help the forests grow. Unfortunately, the ritual can't start because Makar, one of the Koroks, was flying above the forest dungeon and fell down. So we have to go save him, essentially. We're given the Deku Leaf, which allows us to fan big winds and even fly. And we use that to go and save Makar and complete the forest ritual to get the pearl. And I have to say, really my only comment about like the Forest Haven and everything was I'm not a huge fan of the Deku Leaf mechanics. I just find it a little bit tedious, so I wasn't like a huge fan of this dungeon, but I didn't not like it either. After that, we head to the last location to get the Blue Pearl, whose name I can never remember, from Jaboon, the great squid guy. We get to his island, but we learn that Ganon attacked there and Jaboon was forced to go into hiding. The Rito messenger Quill from the very beginning of the game tells us that Jaboon is hiding behind a big rock on Outset Island and we need bombs to get to him. Quill also tells us that Tetra and her pirate crew are docked on Windfall Island, and they are also trying to get to Jaboon and the Pearl. So we head to Windfall and we managed to earn some bombs after completing another one of Nico's challenges, and I forgot about this second one, y'all. I thought I was done with that shit. I was so mad when I saw that you had to do another one. Tetra talks to us via her magic rock she gave us for the first time in a hot minute because she thought we were dead until she spotted us while we were trying to get info to steal the bombs. And she gives us a deadline to get to Jaboon, essentially telling us that the pirates would leave in the morning, and that was crazy, y'all. It was crazy that she put it off for us. Thankfully, the curse Ganon put on the seas since the Jaboon incident makes it essentially eternal night, so we managed to get to Outset Island and the Blue Pearl long before the pirates do. We set the pearls in place on their stands, and once we do, we unlock the Tower of the Gods. Now, while I did remember that this was the dungeon where we got the Master Sword, I actually didn't remember any of the dungeon mechanics or anything, unlike Dragon Roost Island and the Forest Haven. Now, I'm not going to say I hated this dungeon because hate is a very strong word, and there's a dungeon I hate more that I'll talk about later. But the rising and lowering water mechanics got old super fast, and aiming the bow and arrows at those eyes, aiming the bow and arrow in general in Wind Waker when it didn't have like a, when you couldn't lock on, was like really tough for me. Like there wasn't really an indicator of where the arrow would be shooting, so you just kind of had to trial and error it, and I was really bad at accurately shooting the bow. The dungeon does make up for it with the command melody segments, which I did really enjoy, especially when I caught a glimpse of like what my silly was doing in the background while I was like moving around the bricks. And I also really liked getting to go to Hyrule and like the underwater castle where we actually acquired the sword. The music in like the restored Hyrule Castle segment was like, it sounded like really familiar because, you know, it's like a reference to Ocarina of Time, but it was also like really hauntingly distorted, and it was just so beautiful. It's like one of my favorite tracks in the game. Also, I timed this whole dungeon because I recorded it by accident, and it only took me 1 hour and 45 minutes to get through the whole thing and circle back to grab the treasures I missed, so it wasn't super long, especially when I factor in the fact that I played it at 1 a.m. and was taking very frequent YouTube short breaks because I kept forgetting I was recording and putting myself on a time limit. Teehee. Now, at this point is when I decided to stop following the main plot beats and going where I have to go, and I started exploring because adventure, yeah! So here I will put a little pin in my story summary discussion and start talking about some of the side quests and exploration. Honestly, one of my favorite things about Wind Waker is just the sheer amount of random shit there is to do and find throughout the world. Really, in my opinion, it's a good idea to wait until the end of the game when you have most of the tools to start doing the bulk of exploring, just because that way you don't have to double back to come back for things. That happened to me on the Angular Island. I needed the mirror shield to solve a puzzle and didn't have it yet, so I decided to just spend time on Windfall Island because I didn't really feel like doing the story yet. So on Windfall Island, there is a lot to do. I met a group of kids. They called themselves the Killer Bees, and I was forced to play hide and seek with them to assert dominance and prove that I am the coolest kid in school. Really, I was just trying to convince them to go back to school for their teacher because their teacher was so sick of their shit, which, fair enough. Look at this face. Like, this is the face of a child that does not want to learn. Yeah, but honestly, I did have a lot of fun with that segment, and once you do assert dominance over them, they're really nice to you, and they're like, yeah, you're pretty cool. But, I digress. Once you talk to their teacher, she'll tell you about how much she loves joy pendants. If you give her 20, then she will give you the Cabana deed, which lets you access the private oasis. This is a really long ramble to say that in the Cabana, there are these like slidey puzzles, and they were actually like one of my favorite things to do ever. I felt so smart whenever I finished one, and even though like the reward was just rupees, I still loved doing them. However, it was at this point that after being unable to do the things I wanted to do, exploration-wise, because I didn't have the things I needed, as I said, that was when I continued to do story stuff. So I decided to lock back in and make my way back to the Forsaken Fortress with the Master Sword in tow, because that was the next destination. We climbed to the top with very little difficulty, and we managed to finally rescue Errol. Yippee! We're only really able to do it because Tetra helps us out without us knowing, but she reveals herself to us in a cool fashion and helps take Errol and the other girls out of the fortress. Now, we still have to confront Ganon, and I realized at this point in the script that I've been using Ganon and Ganondorf interchangeably, and I'm pretty sure that's a mistake because I'm pretty sure there's something different, but I'm not versed enough in Legend of Zelda lore to know the difference, and I forget which one they actually use in game. So I apologize if I have just been like pissing people off with that. But anyways, we still have to confront Ganondorf Ganon, but before we can do that, we have to murk his overgrown chicken, which we do fairly easily with the help of the Skull Hammer, which we get in the Forsaken Fortress. Honestly, I'm not really complaining that the boss was easy, but at the same time, come on, giant bird, you can do better than that. With the bird gone, that gives us free access to Ganondorf, and he tells us the very troubling news that while our Master Sword is genuine, real, authentic Master Sword, it was also acting as a seal that kept his magic in check. And by taking it out, we unleashed his full power, which is just great. He basically just knocks us aside like we're nothing, and things do not look great for us until Tetra saves us. Unfortunately, despite the surprise attack that did save our life, she does not fare much better against him. She also just gets like knocked on her ass because we're literally like so small compared to him. But then we get the lore reveal that Tetra is actually Zelda, who Ganon has been searching for all this time. And just as things are looking pretty grim for our duo, we are saved by the Rito and Lord Valu, which was hype as fuck. This was my favorite moment in the game. This was the peak of the game, I think. We're taken back to the Tower of the Gods, where we meet the King of Hyrule, whose name I'm about to butcher, Daphnes Nohansen Hyrule, also known as the King of Red Lions. We learned that way back in the day, they called upon the power of the gods to prevent Ganondorf from destroying the world, and to seal him, the gods sent down so much rain that it flooded the world and kept both Ganondorf and the Kingdom of Hyrule beneath the waves. The gods acknowledged that by also drowning all of the people, they would have let Ganondorf have his world of destruction that he wanted. So instead, people made their way to the mountaintops, and those were our ancestors. The mountaintops became the islands, and everybody kind of just, chilled on their islands. So Tetra then gets her magical girl transformation and becomes Zelda that we're familiar with, and the Triforce of Wisdom that was passed down in her family is made whole and apparent. Now, we still need to defeat Ganondorf, and to do that, we're told we need our sword to sparkle. So, the King of Red Lions and I set off to get that done while Tetra waits for us in Castle Hyrule where it's safe, allegedly. In order to restore our sword's power, the King of Red Lions instructs us to find the sages who originally enchanted it, so we head to the Wind and Earth temples. I decided to start with the Earth temple because I was exploring the southern sector of the map and it was closer, and I met the old sage who was a Zora, which is really cool. They held a lyre and they told me I had to find their descendant to be the new sage, and I knew the lyre was Medli's because, we saw her with it a lot, so it wasn't difficult to figure out that we had to go get Medli, and I think it's really cool that the Rito descended from the Zora. That's really interesting to me. So anyways, once I had Medli with me, I was able to actually start doing the temple. And guys, I genuinely don't know if my brain just decided to erase all my memory of Wind Waker after the Tower of the Gods, but I actually did not remember any of this temple. It was like I was playing it for the first time. The funny thing is I literally, my clear file is still saved on my Wii. So I see the clear file and I know that I finished the game, but it's just I don't remember any of this. I actually really enjoyed the mirror shield mechanics, and I was really excited to have it because there were a few puzzles I came upon, as I mentioned, that I couldn't do because I didn't have the mirror shield. So I was super excited when I got it. But yeah, I really liked the Earth Temple, and I thought the boss of this dungeon was also just really silly. It was a big chunky ghost they had to throw around, and it was just really silly, and I just really liked it. Once we secured the Earth Temple, we made our way to the Wind Temple, and I had a feeling if Medli was the Earth Sage, then WAKER would be the Wind Sage, and I was correct in that assumption. So once we snatched him up, we were able to do the Wind Temple. And now, since I just sang the Earth Temple's praises, I don't know if hating the Wind Temple is akin to the opinion of not enjoying the Water Temple in Ocarina of Time. I am not sure if hating the Wind Temple is a commonly held opinion that no one would bat an eye at, or if I'm about to get jumped. But the Wind Temple was my least favorite dungeon up until this point in the game. And now that I've finished the game, for the entire game, I found the whole thing to be so tedious and repetitive. I already mentioned that I wasn't a huge fan of the Deku Leaf and the wind mechanics when they were first introduced. So adding in the hook shot and the iron boots did not make it any more enjoyable. It was just pain and suffering. I did not have a good time. I also got my first ever game over in this dungeon against the boss, which was pretty poopy stinky. I actually did not like this boss at all, but I'm going to talk about it more later in a later segment because I don't remember if the thing that I'm about to complain about was in this version of the boss or just the version that's in the game later, but I'm going to complain about it. But I'm going to put a pin in my bitching to say I might be doing the Wind Temple a little dirty because when you're forcing yourself to do something and you don't actually really feel like doing it. That was me with the Wind Temple. I didn't really want to be playing Wind Waker at the time, but I was so determined to just get through it because I really wanted to put this video out that I was just just play it, just get it done. I also did the Wind Temple mid-afternoon on one of my days off, so the glare from the sun off my television was crazy and it was making my eyes hurt really bad. So the Wind Temple was already just by circumstance was just set up to not be fun. After we wrapped up the Wind Temple, we are told that Ganondorf is nowhere to be found, which should be a good thing, but feels mighty sus. The King of Red Lions tells us to go find the Triforce charts so we can reconstruct the Triforce of Courage before heading back to Hyrule. So Tingle gives you the incredible chart. Tingle is this little fairy guy that I have not mentioned up until this point, but I feel he's so iconic that people generally know him, but I'll show his little dance. But he gives us the incredible chart, which tells you where all of the Triforce charts are. There's 8 of them, so we basically just go from island to island to collect the Triforce charts. A lot of them are just locked behind simple combat challenges, they're not super difficult. And once we collect said charts, we can then take them back to Tingle so he can decipher them, and we can fish up pieces of the Triforce from the ocean with our grappling hook. On one hand, this is my favorite part of the game because this is when it really opens up and you're allowed to basically go and do whatever you want. And y'all, 90% of the fun of this game is exploring all the different islands and seeing what you can find. And I will tell you of what I found in a later section of this video. The Triforce charts themselves, however, got really tedious really quickly because to decipher them, it costs 400 rupees a pop, 398 to be specific. So it was a bit of a grind to get not only all of the charts, but also the subsequent rupees to decipher them. By the time I did, I had also pretty much 100%ed the Great Sea. I got and opened every treasure chart, I got every heart piece, I finished every platform and submarine, I killed all of the big octos. Pretty much the only thing I didn't do was the full moon treasure rings, because when I got the chart that showed where they were, the full moon had just passed, and I didn't want to wait for the next one, because I was grinding, y'all. Needless to say, by the end of the game, I was an absolute unit of a guy. I was rocking 20 hearts, 99 arrows, 99 bombs, the fattest wallet you've ever seen on a little guy. Like, I was just an absolute chonker of a guy. Once the Triforce of Courage is completed, we take it into ourselves and truly become the hero of the winds, which has a very nice ring to it. Then, and only then, we are once again able to access Hyrule. Immediately we know something is wrong because when we go in, we see that Ganondorf destroyed the statue of me, which is so goddamn rude. He also took Zelda to the Tower of Ganon, which we can now access with the Master Sword Triforce combination. The Tower of Ganon is really just recycling the other 4 dungeons. You basically go through a few rooms that use the mechanics of the specific dungeon, and then you have to fight a memory of the boss. And this is where I will say the Wind Temple boss actually tilted me to no end. Once again. Basically, in order to fight this boss, the whole mechanic is you have to grappling hook it. Or not grappling hook, the other one, hook shot. You have to hook shot it. You have to hook shot the tongue and then like sword it. But in order to hook shot him, you have to be wearing the iron boots, which make you walk really slow. But basically, like, I was trying to lock on. Like, the first pull is fine, but once he starts summoning his little, like, minions that are all, like, around you, and it's, like, impossible to lock on to him, oh my god, it got so annoying. Like, it tilted me so bad. It's just, like, the fight itself is just not really hard. I feel like the lock-on system in this game is just super janky, and it's just really, like, it's very apparent how janky it is in this specific fight, and that was what made me mad. But once we get through those 4 memories, we access the next part of the dungeon where you have to fight a bunch of phantom Ganons. It's basically just a bunch of like dead man's volley. And then finally, after that, you get access to the light arrows. It was at this point in time that a pit of dread filled my stomach because, as I mentioned earlier, aiming the bow in this game when the target doesn't have a lock on is my kryptonite. It takes me forever, and it takes me a million arrows just to be able to hit the thing I need to hit once. And because we were so close to the end of the game, and we hadn't gotten the light arrows yet, I thought I was mixing up this game with Ocarina of Time, and I was saved the headache of trying to aim my stupid bow during the final fights. But alas, I was not. I was not spared. Because this takes me right into Puppet Ganon, which was absolute hell for me. Basically, it's a fight that has 3 phases in which you need to hit his blue tail with the light arrows. The last phase in particular, like, the way I was just standing off to the side and just hoping and praying that the arrows I fired would hit the thing, because I was just like, dog, he is moving so fast. I can't aim this bow. Like, it was just, I was standing there just like praying, but with a little faith, trust, and pixie dust, I did manage to beat it on my first try, no less, but it was very stressful. Finally, after defeating Phantom Ganon and Puppet Ganon and Ganon's minions and all of these things, we finally gain access to the real Ganon. Yippee! He's standing over the sleeping Zelda and gives us his whole speech about how wind always brought death to his village, and that how now that he had the Triforce, he could make Hyrule his, like typical villain monologue stuff. And I will say that the last time I played Wind Waker, I had never played Ocarina of Time at that point. And replaying Wind Waker, having played Ocarina of Time, was a really cool experience that I felt made Ganon a lot more interesting of a villain rather than just being like the ominous, shallow, dark figure I felt like he was when I played Wind Waker initially without any context. Needless to say, Ganon literally hits us like one time and we just go flying because Zelda and I are really like we're just little beans in comparison to him. But thankfully, the King of Red Lions shows up and asks the Triforce for hope for us kiddos, and then he tells Ganon he hopes he drowns with Hyrule, which went hard, guys. If Valu saving us was the best moment, then this was the second best moment. Really, the Ganon fight's not too difficult, but positioning with it is actually very important to make the most of your parries. It did actually take me a few tries to figure it out, but I did really like getting to fight with Zelda. I thought that was really cool. Once Ganon is defeated, Hyrule is submerged in water, and we're forced to say goodbye to the King of Red Lions, and our boat doesn't talk anymore. It's just a regular boat now. But thankfully for us, all of our friends are waiting for us on the surface, and it's very heartwarming and sweet. And in the end, Link sets off with Tetra and the pirate crew to wherever the wind takes them, saying goodbye to his grandma and Errol, and bringing our story to a close. And now, once again, we can get into my absolute favorite part of Wind Waker, just how much shit there is to find and explore and do and see. As I mentioned, I pretty much waited until I was at the point in the game where we had to find the Triforce pieces to start doing the exploring, just so I wouldn't find things I couldn't access yet and then have to go back, because that's just like really annoying for everyone. There were so many times that, like, honestly, my favorite part of like RPGs and stuff like that is when you get to like that end point in the game right before the big fight, and you know that like the characters are like on a deadline and you know like the world's gonna be destroyed, and then you spend like 100 years playing Triple Triad. Haha. Like, there were so many times when I was just like, I should just hurry up and get the Triforce charts and just like go and finish the game and work on my video. But like the completionist in me just saw all of this stuff to do, and I had to do it. I had to get it done. So first of all, there are 49 total sections of your map, and thus 49 different islands, and each island can be charted by the fish that's flopping around near it. By throwing bait, the fish will not only fill out your map, but they'll also give you some kind of tip about some kind of side quest somewhere. So I started by just charting my map, and through that alone, I found the boating course, which I had tons and tons of fun with. It was actually so funny because I did the boating course for the first time without recording, and I nailed it. I did not hit a single barrel. I got every rupee, and I was like, oh yeah, I'm so great at this. And then I guess I got camera shy or something, because every subsequent run after that I did record, I hit a barrel, I missed rupees, like it was just not happening for me. The boating course was a really great way to get rupees, but other than that, there wasn't like really any crazy secrets it was hosting. However, whilst charting the map, I also learned about a bunch of the great fairies scattered across the world, and they gave you a bunch of upgrades to the amount of bombs and arrows you could hold, your wallet size, and even your magic bar as well, which was really cool. I also loved the fairy design in this game. I feel like the ones I remember the most are in Majora's Mask, and I think they're kind of ugly, so I thought like the Wind Waker ones were really cute, and I liked them. Throughout each dungeon, you could find treasure charts, and they were scattered all across the islands I visited too. By finding the treasure charts, you were able to find all sorts of things, like money, obviously, but also heart pieces, and even special charts that told you the location of other things, like secret caves, submarines, platforms, and even island heart pieces. I really, really liked that Wind Waker did that because it made being a completionist much easier. Like, this is a game that basically like wants you to be able to find most things in it without having to consult an Ultimania or the internet, and I really appreciated that. Throughout my travels, there were just all sorts of little interactions and games that just made the world so fun to explore. Like on Windfall alone, there was the Merchant's Quest where you could trade these like flowers to traveling merchants across the seas, and I really enjoyed meeting the merchants and then being able to decorate Windfall with all the flowers and flags and statues. You could also get a bottle at nighttime on Windfall by following Mila, and I found it so interesting that something actually happened with Mila and Maggie after we rescued them from the Forsaken Fortress. They were not just there for no reason, like there was like stuff to be gained from them. Windfall also has the sploosh kaboom game, which is literally just Battleship, and y'all, I did that shit so quick on my first try and I felt so lucky. That game was actually such a core memory for me because me and my siblings loved imitating the sound effects from it because they just sound so funny. Last thing about Windfall, I promise, it's just a very busy island. They also had auctions where you could get all sorts of cool prizes and stuff. And I loved the auctions because it was always so funny to me that little Link would pull up and like outbid a room full of adults. And then at the end of the auction, if you won, all of the adults would just be like, we just got beat out by a kid. What the hell? In other news, I got a hint by one of the fishes that the black soil on Outset Island could be dug through. And at first I was like, huh, how does one dig? Because you don't have a shovel in this game like you do in Phantom Hourglass. And then I walked up the hill to visit my pig-loving friends from the very start of the game, you might remember them, only to see this absolute honker of a specimen. And y'all, I love this pig. And that was before he found me a heart piece. Now, I'm talking a lot of positive stuff, but I do want to highlight that there were a few things I didn't love as much, just to keep things balanced. I was not a huge fan of the flight platform, because the number of times I would run out of mana literally just before the goal sent me, I was so annoyed. I also wasn't a super huge fan of the pictograph quest line thing, because the number of times he rejected my photo of the love letter guy was insanity, and it took so long to wait for the love letter guy to walk down to the mailbox. Like, I was literally like staking him out, and I would go on my phone because it would take him so long to walk there, but then I'd be like, no, you can't be on your phone because then you're gonna mess up the picture. I was literally like, Lorenzo, pictograph man, whatever your name is, I forget, please just take my picture. I literally just want the colored pictograph box, please. I just want to be able to take colored pictures. Also, Orca's challenge of hitting him 500 times was tedious. Not difficult, but certainly not my favorite thing to do. And I also found the Savage Labyrinth on Outset Island to be pretty tedious as well. Enough so that I really understand why it was cut out in the Wii U version of the game. I honestly could sit here and talk about all of the things I saw and found and did because, as I mentioned, I did pretty much 100% the game, but in an effort to not have this video be super long, I already feel like it's going to be super long, I will put a pin in it here. It could very well be the nostalgia talking, but exploring the islands in Wind Waker and scouring them from top to bottom to find as much as I could was a really fun experience. The world just felt so homey and comforting, and I really enjoyed all the time I spent in it. The very, very last thing I wanted to mention, I know I said I was done with Windfall Island, was the hero charm. It was the very last thing I got in the game. You get it by giving the teacher another 20 joy pendants, and it lets you see the enemy's life points, which is cool, but I obviously didn't get much use of it seeing as I got it when I was on the final boss. But I thought the mask looked really cool, and I just wanted to share it just because I thought it looked cool. I also thought it was nice that even though I was wearing the mask during like some of the final cutscenes and stuff, it didn't like carry over into the cutscenes. It wasn't on Link's face in the cutscenes, because like one of my like biggest pet peeves and like least favorite things in games is when equipment you have on is in a cutscene and then it just like looks really stupid or blocks your view of the character. Looking at you, Kingdom Hearts 3. I very briefly wanted to touch on the characters as well. Obviously, this category is talked about far more in depth in videos that are based on games that are more character-focused, like Final Fantasy and Kingdom Hearts and Persona, but I did want to mention that one of my favorite things about Zelda games is just how many interesting and eccentric people you can find around. Between the colorful designs and unique vocal prints and movements, Zelda characters are always just such a joy to find and be around. Medli, Makar, and Nico are definitely my favorites in this game. And that brings me to the combat. For the most part, I really liked how this game played. I thought it was fairly intuitive, simple to understand, and fun to navigate, but there were definitely aspects you could tell were a bit dated. The camera, for one, could be a bit finicky. I noticed it the most when I was trying to go up ladders, especially when I was in water. And also during the second phase of Ganon's puppet fight, that was like when I especially noticed how like janky the camera system could be. The other thing was definitely the lock-on system, which I briefly mentioned earlier. Either I forgot how to do it or it's not in the game, but I couldn't seem to find a way to toggle what you were locked onto besides just letting go of the lock-on button and repressing it and hoping for the best. And that made challenges and bosses where there were like a lot of targets on the screen and you had to aim for specific ones to be a bit tough, like really tough sometimes. Honestly, though, I think the pros far outweigh the cons of the game's combat, and overall, I think it's really fun and easy to get into. And now, of course, I've mentioned the music a few times already throughout the video, so you probably all know what I'm going to say about the music, but Wind Waker's OST is just abound with bangers. It may just be the nostalgia talking, I will fully admit that in this instant, but Dragon Roost Island, the opening theme, Windfall Island, the Great Sea theme, the Forest Temple theme, like there's so many good tracks in this game. They're so good and they just always make me feel like ready to go on an adventure. And I just love the music in this game, it's really good. Random thoughts I had while playing the game. I have played this game an uncountable number of times, not the full game, just the beginning part, and I never noticed that our grandma has pictures of us in the house, and I think that is so cute. Guys, the scene where Link says goodbye to his grandma is so ingrained into me and my siblings that when we're saying goodbye to each other in real life, sometimes we just start dramatically air hug waving at each other, and I love it. It's hilarious. I know I already mentioned this fat pig, but you guys, this fat pig sent me. I wish I could make you understand how much it just made me laugh when I saw it. I love it. The way these kids be circling me is crazy right now. I apologize for the way that I am just completely randomly flying this random thought into the video, but oh my god, y'all, my entire God-given life, I thought that Wind Waker in the official Zelda the official Legend of Zelda timeline took place if the hero of time was defeated in Ocarina of Time. I literally thought that like my whole life, because it makes sense, right? Like the hero of time fails, so the gods are the ones that decide to seal Ganon. And now I looked at the official timeline because, you know, I just played Wind Waker again, only to see that no, Wind Waker is if he succeeds. I didn't know that. I've been misled. I've been having the wrong thought my whole life. And that's crazy to me. That's crazy. But honestly, good for Ganon for just being that determined. He just gets defeated and he's like, you know what? Actually, no, I'm coming back for round 2 with your reincarnation. Get fucked. Love you, bro. At first, in Ganon's tower, I thought you had to hold Phantom Ganon's sword to pick the right door, and it would work. You just had to hold it. But it turned out that I was just getting lucky, and you were actually supposed to follow the direction the hilt was pointing in. And I honestly never felt so stupid in all my life, because I genuinely just was like, yeah, I'll just hold the sword, and I'll go through the right door. And that's not how that works. In conclusion, revisiting Wind Waker was really fun for me, especially seeing as this was the first time I did quite a bit of the extra content. Even though some of it could be tedious, and I honestly don't recommend finishing the Great Sea because the grind can make it less fun, I really recommend Wind Waker. It's cute, it's fun, it's simple, the puzzles and dungeons are interesting, it's so colorful, and the Wii U version has a bunch of quality of life updates that make it even better. So yeah, play Wind Waker. Thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you on the next one.